So I think I'll just first start by showing you a bit of the trailer, since most of you probably haven't heard of the game. Okay. There's no sound.
No sound?
Yeah. Okay, never mind. There we go. Something's wrong with this.
Through the stars, there we'll find a place to be. Close your eyes, all these wonders. In the dark we saw them shine, you and me.
Okay. Hello, folks. My name's Ken, and I'd first like to just make a disclaimer that unlike most of the fine folks that came before me, I actually do not have a lot of experience in the industry. And I do not come here today with a bunch of data and graphs and charts, partly due to the nature of the subject. But before you file out of the room, I'd just like to know that there will also not be any cake or refreshments at the end of this session. So let's start. So I started making games about 5 or 6 years ago. And about 2 years ago, I decided to try to take a leap of faith and try to make what I love to do, what I live to do, with a game called To the Moon. And it was a very personal project for me, like most of my projects. And let's see. So today, we'll be talking about storytelling, I suppose. Just to give a little bit of flow here. First, we'll start with stories and functions, what makes human storytelling, the tools and deliveries for the format, and some of the goals and purposes to aim for. So let's see. Let's just cut the crap and get right down to the boring part. Stories. So what are these stories, asks nobody. Stories in its basis is just a sequence of events told through a narrative. But at the core, it's a form of communication. And it's one of a very special forms of communication in such that it's very unique in what it does. And that is, whereas most forms of communication transfers data and information, storytelling can transfer a mental state and an emotional state as well. It can share what joys you felt during extraordinary parts of your life, or the feeling of longing, loss, or you can just be an asshole like me and make people feel depressed for no reason. It's very satisfying, regardless. And some of the most beneficial aspect of having a story in your game, a very human story in your game, in fact, is demographics. As you can see, the current demographic is broken down into a very complicated format of casual, mid-core, and hardcore. I can't even count them with my fingers anymore. But most of them are humans. So given that, if you have a compelling stuff narrative, when people relate to it, this will reach out to their audience to make it available. Now, some of the other formats that share this power is music and art, of course. But in a way, these two formats are also implicit ways of storytelling. When you listen to a piece of music, or you look at a picture of an artwork, it's innate storytelling going on within the audience's mind that acts according to their own experiences. And stories in the most powerful form, which combines these two as well as interactions to add a sense of involvement, and that is games. So in that sense, storytelling is not just about the actual plot that is delivered, but it's about a connection between you and the audience, because there's always a disconnect between what you want to say and what you want to communicate, that particular mental state, and what the audience will draw upon from their own experiences. And it is very vital to always keeping a pseudo two-way communication, despite the fact that you cannot hear the audience as you write the story. So what makes human stories? First of all, human stories can be any kind of story. It essentially boils down to the very foundations of how people relate to the story. Essentially, it's a sense of not being alone as an audience when you watch the story. It's to know that all the vulnerabilities and all the worries you have and joys and desires are shared by someone else out there. And that is a very basic human instinct, and it's something that stories can deliver very well. And some of the elements usually found in human stories are that it's personal, it's relatable, it's authentic, and it's a complete spectrum of emotions. So first of all, the personal aspect. It is absolutely vital to have a focus in what you want to deliver and the themes and the actual state of mind you want the audience to be in. So this is most easily accomplished with a small scaled main cast to have a sense of focus on the actual characters. Even in the most epic formed kind of games, such as Dragon Age, when done well, there's still always an innate focus on particular characters and characterizations. Now, relatable. It's actually very difficult for the actual story to be relatable, but what should be relatable is the actual themes. So, and then the player is able to relate through their own experiences as long as it covers a wide enough margin. So for To the Moon, for example, the story is not particularly relatable at all to most people. Most people have not gone through such a life with I don't even know what's going on here, but it's not relatable as far as the story is concerned. However, as far as the theme goes, it covers themes such as connections, communication, and miscommunication, which is very, very fundamental to every part of the human life. And in that, it triggers actual experiences from the audience that watches it, which in turn is more powerful than anything the author himself or herself can deliver. So the next aspect is a complete spectrum of emotions. And I have to mention that Futurama is actually one of the shows that does this fantastically. And in such that it never dwells on the touching moments it has, and it is focused, of course, mostly on comedic nature. But at the same time, that means that when it does, there's that huge stark contrast, and it's simply accentuated for the emotional values and the connection that it offers. And also it counters the expectations of the audience, such that when you go into something being told that this is going to make you cry, you automatically have a defense mechanism set up such that you think you're better than that in a way. Well, not particularly, but there is definitely a sense of defense mechanism set up that way. So you're not in the actual natural state, whereas the story should be written to accommodate that. So there should be a sense of authenticity, and it doesn't have to be autobiographical, but where the source of the inspiration comes from, it should be innate and something that you're deeply connected to, because only that way can you actually understand, can you actually draw from what truly fuels such emotions, and you can reverse engineer your own emotions into finding out a way to deliver them in a packaged format. And it's okay to be personal and vulnerable, and one way to know that something you've written is personal enough is such that at least someone in your life is royally pissed off at you for making it. Or they could be greatly moved, but most likely pissed off. So, and that's okay. So some tools and execution for the human stories. So of course we have the echo of perspective and lamp shading, uniting all the aspects of the project, and a sense of empathy and anticipation for the player reactions. So first, addressing perspectives. Human stories are extremely varied in terms of reception because the issues always have so many perspectives to them, and no two persons are alike. So it is absolutely impossible to basically address the viewpoint of each single person. However, if you were to just give an opportunity to simply acknowledge that they exist, to simply say that, look, I know this story isn't going how you want it to, or that these things that's happening that perhaps doesn't make sense to you at this point, but I just want you to know that I understand that you're getting that feeling and it's going to be addressed. And that sense of acknowledgement, even if just a slap in the face and saying, no, I understand what you're thinking, but no, that still erases the sense of being ignored, which is the worst thing you can do to a player. And of course, it's important, however, to keep it subtle and integrated to the game. So in To the Moon, essentially the two doctors are, in a way, the role of calling out the BS. And it's not exactly done as perfectly as it should be because it's not as subtle and it gets in the way sometimes. But however, the intentions are there. And so it's essentially a play within a play in a sense, how it's integrated into the system. So as the player is experiencing the story of Johnny's life, the two doctors are there with them in the first time, and they can echo what the player is feeling, such that the player doesn't feel left out or feel like something is not addressed. So, and then a sense of unity is also absolutely vital, and it's something that's extremely difficult to pull off in a larger scale development, but there's an advantage to it in indie developments. So the most danger, of course, comes from when components are made in a modular format, such that we have a team for the story here, we have an art team here, and just everybody do their stuff, and then we bring everything up together. Because there is so much synergy to be had, and so much advantage in so many ways, and unpredictably so, that can come from it. Let's see, for To the Moon, one of the more obvious examples would be the actual soundtrack. I'm not actually that good of a composer as far as technicality goes. And if you analyze the music from a musical perspective, each track by itself is actually not that special at all. However, when you combine them with the actual story, and which it is absolutely integrated with, it suddenly becomes more than the sum of its parts. And as you can see, out of the 30 tracks in the entire soundtrack, a third of it all have the same main theme from the main song. And as the game goes on, that eventually has a subconscious effect on the player and bringing a sense of unity and theme, and just a sense of unique identity to the game that is gradually ingrained. And of course, there are other less predictable ways of benefiting from these, such as, let's see, one of the most difficult parts about, taxing parts about developing for indie story-driven games is the resources and the characters involved, because you cannot reuse resource as conveniently as in other formats. So essentially, throughout the development, I think I saved about over 100 character sprites by simply integrating in a story that in the memory world, which is where the entire story mostly takes place upon, all the characters who are less remembered are just fuzzied out into static placeholder forms. And when you work with every single component, when you work with every single module closely, and you have established that connection way early on and not just bring them in when you need them, you can work together to just assemble many, many ways of addressing such problems and just saving cost and making everything more efficient overall. So a sense of empathy and anticipation. So again, storytelling in a way is still a two-way process, despite the fact that you cannot directly hear what the players are saying. So it's absolutely vital to synchronize, to try to synchronize at every single vital point in time, and about what mental state they're in, so you can appropriately address it. And I haven't actually tried this before, but in theory, I think it would actually be highly beneficial to have an actual graph of all the important points in the game. And at each point, note the particular state the player would be in, and then react upon that. And once you have that, I think the best approach is usually either to reflect it or subvert it completely. By reflecting it, you would essentially be proceeding with the catharsis that will come with the story and keep on building rapport. Whereas if you subvert it, it would gain rather comedic values or simply, well, twists and the like. But anywhere in the middle between the two is mostly uneventful, and it doesn't really do much good. So ultimately, the end goal for designing the stories, it's not too, like, it's in the industry, it's where story is quite a second-hand, like a backhanded nature. It's very tempting to just say we want the story slapped on just to make it more interesting, or just to have more things going on so that to keep the player interested. But that is not an actual goal to aim for, because there is nothing in that you can actually aim at. But however, if you simply aim to communicate an authentic emotional state by the end of the player's playing session, then that state is achieved automatically, and the game is automatically more interesting as a result. So I'd just like to end the presentation saying that, there's so much in every life, and that can be made into a story. And no matter, that doesn't even just go to those of us who lead crazy lives and do crazy shit, but just in the lives of every single day and in every single one of us, and we just need to find the right angle to tell them. And I sincerely hope that's cheesy enough of a line to end it on, because we are about done. So thank you very much for your time.
We've got time for a couple of questions and thoughts. Who would like to be first? Or raise your hand, shout, jump. There we go.
The previous speaker said that he tries out his ideas on his wife. Do you have a set of people that you see how your story is communicating to? What kind of feedback do you go through as you're creating your stories?
I definitely do. It's kind of fortunate in a sense, since before I started making To the Moon, I made free games for about 4 years. And over that time, I kind of built up this group of wonderful people on an online forum I hosted. And so essentially, as time went on, they've pretty much they've been such a help, and they've just contributed to every single thing I've made ever since then. And the cycle of feedback is absolutely vital, especially to something that has to do with human nature.
Next question. In the front.
you emphasize the importance of music to convey a message, a feeling throughout the game and the soundtrack. And I'm wondering, as a small developer, how do you create the music? Are you composing it? Are you hiring someone? And do you have any advice for small developers for music libraries or other resources?
In my case, I do compose most of the music, and I have the fortune of having some wonderfully talented people helping me, such as Laura Shigihara, who did a wonderful song for To the Moon. But as far as development goes, I think I would recommend, well, it depends on the cost, of course. I do believe original music is always the best, but it's very important, like when you use original music, don't just have them make any music. Have them make a music that's, has recurring themes, and I think that's actually the most important part of having original music, because then you can put a stamp on it and have everything be connected, as opposed to whereas if you get it from the libraries, it's just scattered themes, which might fit in each individual scene, but when coming together, it's not a soundtrack, if that makes sense.
Next question. There in the back.
If you had to pick one game that was a big inspiration to the game that you played in your past that was an inspiration to this game, what would you compare it to?
It's kind of funny because I do know what my favorite game is, and that's a game from my childhood. It's story-driven as well. It's actually a city game about a kid who can speak to animals, and he helps to wage a war between the dogs and the cats of the town. But that has nothing to do with this game. I think this game actually drew more inspiration from films such as Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Memento.
Any further questions? No? Well, we'll wrap it up here then. Please give a hand to Ken GAO and Freebird Games.